This beast sprang out of the dense grass as these men were fishing. Fishermen are accustomed to searching for fish. This is the reason these three fishermen were so taken aback when a monster sprung out of the dense grass and headed straight for them. However, what was it and what was its desire? A bunch of friends got together on a little Utah road on a sunny spring Sunday. Their pickup vehicles lined up one by one, and they climbed out. The three men, Jerry, Bill, and Arthur, were still residents of their hometown and were acquainted from high school. Hugs were exchanged as they got out of their trucks and began to stroll in the direction of the adjacent creek. They had almost made fishing at the stream into a routine. It was a great way to unwind, catch up, and catch some food for supper. However, they had no idea what would be in store for them on that particular day. The creek wasn't far from a highway that ran through the area. You could hear the traffic in the distance, but it was close to their houses, so they didn't mind. They had been coming to this spot since before the highway was built, and they refused to move out of sentiment and stubbornness. As they set up their chairs and rods, they joked around and reminisced about old times. All their kids were grown up by now and had moved to different parts of the country. They had been like one big family back in the old days, but times had changed. Jerry used to have a dog called Mel, who he would bring fishing with the group from time to time. Sadly, she passed away a few months ago, and he missed her at times like these. He got news from his kids every now and then, so he knew they were all right, but Mel was gone forever. She tragically died a few months ago, and he missed her throughout these difficult times. His children sent him updates from time to time, so he knew they were all well, but Mel was lost to eternity. Even worse, Mel had supported Jerry's wife through her cancer struggle, which she had lost earlier in the year. He was too elderly to make new acquaintances, and the only people he could talk to were Bill and Arthur, so these fishing excursions helped him deal with his loneliness. Thus, they maximized their time spent together. They had a good chuckle at Mel trying to catch fish the manner she wanted to while swimming in the stream. When they failed to find anything, they would often accuse her. She would fling herself around in the water, frightening away any possibility of winning. Jerry would tell Mel, hey, we're working here," in an attempt to convince her to cooperate, but it didn't work since Mel liked swimming too much. However, this time there was no dog to agitate the creek, so they had no justification for failing to capture anything. Jerry opened a large cooler his wife had given him for his birthday years ago. He had provisions, beverages, and bait inside. After that, they all took a seat and started the day with their fishing rods in hand. But nothing biting continued as time passed. They were just enjoying each other's company and didn't mind at all. They were about to nod off when something unexpected occurred. A man gave a shocked gasp. He noticed that two semi-trucks were on the verge of colliding, and there was erratic driving on the highway. There was something crossing the street, but it was too distant to identify. They could hear people shouting out of their windows in the distance, and there was horn blaring. Ahead, considerably nearer their fishing site, there was a rustling sound in the bushes. Anything that had crossed the street was rapidly approaching them. The three men sat there staring at each other, then back toward the bushes, silently exchanging looks. They were clueless as to what it may be. The noise was growing closer as the bushes began to shake more quickly. Though it was a tiny, high-pitched sound, a wild animal may have been the source. Arthur shouted, "What is that?" and slid back in his chair slowly. The way the traffic flowed suggested that it was a major event. On the other side of the highway, close to the forest, bears were rumored to roam the region. They were a little more at ease here because of it, but it appeared as though a bear may have crossed across from the forest to the stream. The fishermen were about to bolt from their chairs. Having gone camping previously, they were aware that they would not be able to fend off a ferocious, wild bear. At that moment, something sprang from the foliage and landed on the wet creek bed. It was not a bear, though. It was a little animal, not very large in size. Its velvety paws, gray hair, bushy tail, and large eyes were all present. It slowed to a stop as soon as it emerged from the dense grass. It was only a small kitten, as they saw when it tiptoed up to their fishing area. Everyone in the group exhaled in relief. "God, I was really afraid there for a minute," Arthur remarked, taking up his beer and leaning back once again. Somehow the cat had managed to cross the road and reach the brook. Her hair was a little disheveled, and she wore no collar. She scampered back a few yards while maintaining her focus on the males, sneaking up to their encampment and using her teeth to grab a piece of fish bait. She devoured the bait and then vanished into the sea. She was really little, so it was merely superficial. Fearing she may not surface, the three guys shifted to the edge of their seats and looked into the water. That's when she suddenly reappeared, splattering water all over the place. The small cat had a fish in its jaws as the fishermen cleaned their faces. Jerry said, "Well, look at that." It seemed unbelievable to him. They had been trying all day, and she had caught a fish so effortlessly. "That one, she's a fisherman's friend," Bill said, chuckling to himself. The kitty raced back to play with her brand new pals. She immediately ran to Jerry's belongings and dove into the fish-filled cooler box. "Now what do you think you're doing?" Jerry smiled and asked. Although he had never been a cat person, he was gradually growing fond of this one. Ultimately, it appeared as though she had recently given him a fish. At some point, the men returned to their fishing, and she remained within the box. After hours of conversation, they had nearly forgotten about her by the time they were ready to pack and go. Jerry let out a deep sigh when he realized the cat was still in his cooler as he pulled his fishing rod in and put it back into its container. Jerry caved up and picked up the cooler. Jerry told his companions, who couldn't help but smile at the prospect of him having a new friend, "Looks like this one is my catch of the day." They were aware of his loneliness, but were unsure of how to support him. Jerry was the last to depart after everyone exchanged well wishes and said their goodbyes. One more surprise awaited him as he packed up his trunk. A second small gray kitty was sitting by his tire. She played and snuggled in the cooler with the first one when she was reunited with it. "This has to be your sister," Jerry thought to himself. He merely lacked the courage to say no, even though it was obvious that this was a package deal. He cleaned, washed, and brought home the two cats. They both embraced him and expressed gratitude to their new father after he used his towel to dry their small hair. Jerry posted posters throughout town asking if anybody had found them, but he got no answers. He made the decision to take them to the vet after a week. When he arrived, he was informed that Dr. Gilligan had retired and that Sandy, his daughter, was now the head veterinarian. He used to go there for Mel, who was treated by Dr. Gilligan. Sandy questioned, "Who are these little cuties?" upon seeing Jerry's two orphans. Their fascination to fishing was the main reason he chose to go with Angler and Fisher, even though he hadn't given it any attention before. Jerry and Sandy ended up conversing for about an hour before agitation in the waiting area spread. The next week over dinner, they made the decision to continue. Thus, while the fishermen themselves didn't catch any fish that day, Jerry's new family was beginning. He never went fishing without Angler and Fisher with him after that day. It's up to you now. What were your thoughts on this endearing tale? Kindly share your opinions with us in the space provided below.